For everybody out there that doesn't know, Sam Robinson is our head of product testing in the test facility in Yorktown for hard goods. That's drivers through putters. And he is also a hell of a talent at swiping right on all the social media apps that swipe right. And I think we've got
we call him that.
What's that?
Social media.
Yes.
And every week he says he's off it, but then he's back on it. But anyway, Sam is swiping right on something in regards to becoming an expert at something rather than an expert tinker. And how this came about was, according to the Seattle Times this week, former number one world amateur for 46 weeks in a row, Kris Williams, just hung it up, meaning hung up the golf spikes and retired at age 28. He's going to go back and finish college, and right now he's an intern in the athletics department. Okay, there's not many people that have held the world amateur number one ranking for more consecutive weeks than him. John Rahm tops the list, and the other guys are all pretty damn good golfers on tour. So it's kind of a shame to see, but he said after college, after he goes back and finishes, is something he always wanted to do, that he might or might not return to golf.
So why did he hang it up then?
Well, that's kind of the bigger story. So what was most interesting to me is when you read between the lines, one of the major reasons he hung it up was his confidence was completely eroded standing over the golf ball. And one of the major contributors to that was golf equipment. And what I mean by that is when he became a pro, Nike sponsored him. And we've heard this story more than once by more than one golfer. And that is that when, I am not saying they made the worst equipment, I just don't think they made very good equipment. And I think it hurt a lot of players' games, and him being one of them. And he admitted that, he lost his confidence. He couldn't get used to them, and he stood over the ball and didn't know how to execute when you needed to execute, right? So that brings us to the bigger question that Sam's swiping right on, and that is, should you become an expert at something or an expert tinker?
I mean, too often we see guys coming in the office where, we've got a certain tester, we won't name names. He comes in with a new set of irons every now and again, and he'll ask us to check the loft and lies of everything.
Every month.
He's retired. He's got plenty of money. He's just having fun, trying things out. But at the end of the day, at what point does it end? And he just decides on a piece of equipment, and he can become an expert with those tools. So we were talking about it last week where, if you go into work every day and you have a different hammer, if you're a craftsman and you have a different hammer and you have to figure out how to use this hammer every day, you're not going to be very good at using a different hammer every day.
Well, take the guy that's had a hammer, right? I roofed when I was in the summer between high school and college, right? And there was this guy that was just better than everybody else. And he'd been up there on the roof for 30 years, And I'll never forget, he stuck all the nails in between all of his fingers, and within 3 seconds, bam, 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 all the nails are in. And I watched this guy in amazement because that would have taken me 30 years to do, right? So imagine if 30 years, which he had the same hammer. I mean, it was not pretty. It was ugly. It was beat up. But if you were to hand him a new high-tech new hammer 30 years after he is, that thing had become a part of his body, Yeah. And if I hand him a new hammer, he's got to relearn that to some degree, you know?
That 10,000 hours to expert clock that resets.
Every time you put something new in your hand, it resets that clock, right? So, what do you think about that, Sam? I mean, you have been in the golf industry now for a few years. You've been a great golfer, college. You tinkered a little bit, tinkered a little more, and you're a tinker to some degree with your swing, with equipment. Are you thinking a little bit differently now that you've been a part of the industry and had an opportunity now to tinker more than you used to? Like, what are your thoughts in regards to that?
Yeah, I think once you're able to find the right piece of equipment for you, don't change it. There's a saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think I'm starting to find the right equipment for my game that I can
you're tinkering.
Well,
I would say this. I would say this about you. When it comes to equipment, you do not change your clubs until you think it's better or know it's better.
Yeah, I do. I put equipment through the paces a lot more than just changing drastically an entire set of irons.
But your swing, you change. And you change even if you shoot 62.
Well,
or whatever you shoot.
Here's the way I look at it. Like, I'm not opposed to change. Like, for example, Most Wanted, Tony and I would argue back and forth. We would change protocols for our testing, and it would frustrate our reader to some degree. But we would always say, what's that?
My bad.
We would always say, if you became smarter and got better, you implemented it, period. That's what you got to do, right? So I'm not opposed to people changing their equipment if it definitively makes you better or your swing.
Right, and don't just change it just because you
There you
can or because you think that you don't like the way it looks or something. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I played a Cobra driver when I first started working at MyGolfSpy, and then I tested best with a Ping. And Ping's got that. Now it's changed. They've cleaned up the crown a little bit, but when I first grabbed a Ping, it was the Dragonfly technology, and we get a lot of guys giving us subjective feedback in the testing. Oh, I just can't look at this. It's not traditional. That matte black with the webbing and that, I can't get used to it. But if it's the best performing club for you, don't worry about how it looks. Just become an expert with that club and continue to use it.
Yeah, Tony, is that something that you do?
What's that? Change equipment?
Did you not have to sign a contract to not change equipment this year?
Well, we didn't sign anything, but and I certainly
Word is bond, my man.
negotiated some favorable terms. Yeah, you know, I'm probably not as big of a tinkerer as certainly as I used to be.
Right.
I
was
tend
worse?
to mess with the driver. Like, I will, without some type of rule and regulation imposed on me by my friends, I would probably play 6 different drivers.
And
on the
thank
course
God
and
for
would
your
put-
friends.
But that's not even true. Like, I played the Cobra LTD for 2 seasons, the G400 LST for the better part of 2 seasons. So, yeah, I guess
That's
you know,
so
I
I
move
think-
things in and out, but I'm not.
Well, I think
crazy,
Sam brought up the better point.
except
And that-
shafts. I'll go through 50 shafts.
That's a
all
big
season.
change, bigger than you think.
It is.
I think that there's a difference between changing your tools and sharpening your tools too.
Good analogy, and I think you said it right. Like, if you're changing because they're better performers, I'm okay with that, right? But then even once you've done that, become an expert. But if you're changing because, oh man, this thing didn't play well this round, or I don't like the looks of that, hone your skill, hone your craft, right? And part of a craft is the tools you have, and the better. You rarely run into a talented craftsman that doesn't have the right tools,
Right.
And he's not changing them all the time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Tiger Woods, look at his putter. Jordan Spieth, look at his putter. You know, the technology in metalwoods and irons has improved over time. So, yeah, they're probably going to put better performing equipment in their bag. But at the end of the day, I mean, you and I both know that there's not that much technology in putters. But those guys, those are the tried and true pieces of equipment that they rely on. And
Yeah, if you want a great example, just look no further than this weekend. Steve Stricker just won with 13-year-old irons.
There you go.
Better, newer is not always better. And back to the point, and that is just try to put into your head or swipe right that try to become an expert at the tools that you have. You know, we have a guy that works with us, a designer, and he, Sean, he is like Tony. He tinkers all the time.
I don't tinker all the time. What the?
Yes, you do. You have an addiction. But,
Once you get that stigma, you can't shake it.
But this guy has an obsession with it. You know he does. He'll call and just ask the most asinine question. I'm like, dude, you've got the best clubs. Stick with him. His wife actually made him sign a contract that many of you have
That
probably
went
seen.
around on some other famous social media accounts. So.
Yeah. So he had to sign a contract with his wife that he wouldn't change clubs. And I talked to him the other day and didn't even prompt him to ask him how it's going. But he was like, thank you for saying that, because I haven't changed equipment all season. It's the best my game has been, you know? So give it a shot. Change. You know, it's funny that Nike was the problem or culprit for a lot of these golfers, it seemed. And their slogan back there was embrace change, right? Which I'm cool with, but maybe we shouldn't embrace that much change.
There's that thing is, for those people that didn't know that that Tiger Woods didn't play when he was winning all those majors, he didn't play Nike irons. There was a Nike logo slapped on that iron. They were hand forged.
Well, that's not universally true. I mean, they did get to the point where they were making irons for him. It's been a sore subject with some Nike guys.
Bigger
who
picture
use the
here,
idea.
overarching theme. If you have one bad round with your irons, don't don't always change. Maybe you just had a bad swing thought that day, or your tempo was off. It's not always the clubs.
Yeah.
Always the club. Except when it's the ball.
Except when it's the ball.